Up first, we have Craig Guarente. Craig is an Oracle expert. He and his company, Palisade Compliance, help organizations with their Oracle needs, whether it's renewals, audits, all of the Oracle world. Craig himself came from Oracle and is a deep expert in the ecosystem as well as the licensing. I thought of Craig with this T-shirt, software asset management, controlling uncontrollable, intangible investments. That's what it feels like, especially with Oracle. So I appreciate Craig for sharing his expertise. Give him feedback. Let him know what you think about this, especially if it's awesome, right? Thank you, Craig, once again. And here's Craig.
Hi everyone, my name is Craig Guarente, and I'm the president and founder of Palisade Compliance. And I am so excited to be joining you today for the 2024 Global ITAM Summit. So I want to thank Jeffrey Tiefertiller for inviting me again to talk about issues around licensing and compliance. And when I was talking with Jeffrey, we were trying to decide on what's a good topic. What do people want to hear about? And he's like, Craig, give me something different. Give me something new. Give me something that's, you know, maybe a little off center. So I decided, or we decided, that today's conversation will be about compliance being something that is negotiable, compliance being something that is more or as much opinion as it is fact. And I know a lot of us in the ITAM world, we look at that and sort of turn our head a little bit and say, how could that be? You're either in compliance or you're out of compliance. But the reality is much more complex. And I know there's a lot of firms out there who've spent a lot of money on different systems and tools to give them what they consider a compliance position. And I love those tools, and I think they do a really good job in bringing you facts that you can incorporate into your decision making so that you can form an opinion. And when I think about, getting an audit report from a vendor, be it Oracle or another vendor, really all that is their opinion based on the facts that they have and the decisions that they've made to lead them to create that report for you. So it's just an opinion piece. Very similar when Palisade Compliance does an audit report for our clients, be it a proactive audit or something in response to, let's say, something Oracle has produced, we are giving you our opinion based on the facts that have been gathered, either through tools or systems or interviews or spreadsheets or scripts or what have you. At the end of the day, it's just an opinion. So, an opinion based on lots of experience and lots of facts, hopefully. So that's today's conversation. Let me give you a little bit of background before I dig into that. Talk a little bit about Palisade Compliance and myself. So I spent 16 years at Oracle. I was their global vice president of contracts, business practices, the audit team, the LMS audit team. Had about 1,200 people working for me all around the world. So anything you bought from Oracle, and for a while, any audit that Oracle undertook went through a tool, a process, a system that I was managing. Fast forward from 1995 to 2011, and I started Palisade Compliance right there. And Palisade is an independent consulting firm that helps organizations with their Oracle licensing and contracting. So we do negotiations, audit supports, ULA certifications. We've developed our own tools and scripts to help us analyze customers' contracts as well as their usage of Oracle products. And we pull all that information together to build our compliance reports for our customers. So enough about Palisade and enough about me, and I thought I'd get into the nuts and bolts of our conversation today. So let's talk about compliance being negotiable. And there's really four elements that you need to negotiate to ensure that you are in compliance. And I say need to negotiate. I guess I should have said you should be negotiating these things as you build your compliance position. So the first thing are your contracts with your vendors. Now, Palisade, we just focus on customers' Oracle contracts, and that could mean PeopleSoft, Hyperion, Siebel, Cerner, Sun Java, whatever. We help with all of those. But at the end of the day, when you are licensing software, hardware, services from a vendor, it's really important to look at your agreements through multiple lenses. Obviously, we always look at them from the fiscal lens. Am I paying a fair price for the stuff that I'm getting? Am I getting an industry leading discount? Things like that. But I highly encourage you also to negotiate those things from a compliance position. And not just from a compliance position today, but you have to think about, when I sign this thing, am I going to be audited in 2 or 3 years by the vendor to ensure compliance? So will this document hold up over time? Will it keep me in compliance 2 years out, 3 years out, 4 years out? Or are there traps in here that I know, based on my business, will come up and haunt me later? So it's really important, I believe, that from an IT asset management standpoint, you have a seat at the table. You're not leading the conversations, you're not the driver of the negotiations with your vendors, but you're definitely a stakeholder and an influencer in that process. And you're going to be the unsung hero, because if you're able to influence that process and you're able to get certain terms and conditions into your agreements with those vendors, you will save your organization millions and millions of dollars later on. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. So the reality of compliance with licensing is that more than half of the compliance issues that we see with our clients are not based on how much stuff are you using. You licensed 100 database license, and Oracle says you're using 200, so therefore you owe us, a couple of $1,000,000. That is half or less than half of the things we see. What is the other half? What are the other half of items? Well, they come from contracts. Items in your agreements with the vendor that have maybe changed within your business and pushed you out of compliance. So let me give you a few examples. One is who can use the software? The customer definition, we call it in the Oracle world. So if Palisade was licensing software from Oracle, it might say, Palisade Compliance, no subsidiaries, no other entities can use the software. And that might be a very standard clause of a software vendor, or a cloud vendor, or a hardware vendor even. So it's really important that you expand that definition as much as possible to include not only who can use the software today, but who might be using it tomorrow. So what if Palisade in a year did an acquisition? Or what if a company acquired Palisade? All of those things will determine your compliance position, your M&A activity, plus what's in your agreement. So you really want to be careful and ensure that you have proper language. I'll give you an example. We had a client, a huge technology company, and they were negotiating an agreement with Oracle end of May. And I went up to our sponsor and I said, I'll call him Bob. Bob, there's one thing here that you told me, is that your company is very acquisitive and you're going to go into this this pattern of buying other companies. So the way this ULA is written today is going to cause you a big problem 3 years down the road when you're trying to certify out of it. You're going to find yourself out of compliance at that point, and you're going to be forced to do the next deal with Oracle. So what I would like you to do is let's get this language inserted into the agreement. We gave them the language, and there was a lot of pushback on the Oracle side. I said, let's give them money. Let's give Oracle some money and tell the salesperson, if they put this language in the contract, you'll pay more than you're paying right now. And that's a tough sell, to go through a procurement organization and tell them to spend more, because their KPIs are all about savings. And guess what? They didn't listen to me. So 3 years down the road, they were trying to get out of this agreement with Oracle, and sure enough, M&A activity had blocked them. And I remember Bob saying to me, I wish we had taken the advice of Palisade 3 years ago. So sure enough, fast forward, the next ULA with Oracle had all the language. Customer paid a little bit more to get those terms and conditions in there, but it kept them into compliance. So that 3 years later, they were actually able to certify out of that agreement. So customer definition, who can use it, where can you use it, what can you do with the software, those are all the types of things that you want to negotiate up front. Because once you have those events, a vendor like Oracle, Microsoft, whomever, they're not just going to throw in those terms and conditions for free. They're going to see it as an opportunity to increase their revenue, and they're going to want to extract that from you. So negotiating your contracts way up front will give you a better chance of being in compliance towards the end. The next thing you want to negotiate to make sure you're in compliance are policies. And policies are a two-way street. You have policies, and your vendors have policies. Your vendors have policies that are written on the internet, on their websites, and they've got policies, we call them unwritten. They're written down somewhere, but you just can't see them. And whether or not those things matter is really important to your compliance position. Let me give you a great example, again, focusing on the Oracle world. Oracle contracts are typically silent on licensing differences when you're running their software in a bare metal server or on a hypervisor on a virtualized environment like VMware. Contracts don't make a distinction between them. However, Oracle has created a lot of confusion in this area. Well, they put up policy documents that talk about, not only how to license Oracle in a virtualized environment, but even how to license Oracle in the cloud. And sometimes these policies are to your benefit, and sometimes they are to your detriment. And Oracle even has other policies that they keep sort of behind the firewall there that are known to them, but not known to you. So for example, how do I segment my environment so I can need less licenses if I'm using VMware? There's very specific instructions that Oracle will accept if you are under the idea that you have to accept their policies. Now the thing with software licensing and hardware and services is there's typically language in your contracts that say what's included in that arrangement and what's not included in that arrangement. And things like things that are not in the agreements are typically excluded. Oracle even goes so far as when they put these policy documents, they even say these are not part of your contracts and they can't be included, yada, 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 but then they go do it anyway. So they try to enforce them, and they can change them at any time. So it's really important when you are thinking about compliance is how do we negotiate in or out any policies? Again, with Oracle, contracts are pretty silent. They don't reference these policies. They don't talk about these policies. So you have an opportunity either at the point you're negotiating your agreement to include them or exclude them, or if you were ever to get an audit letter from Oracle, one of the first things you would do is figure out, well, which of these non-contractual policies is Oracle going to try to use against me? And before we send anything to Oracle, we want to talk to them about what's included, what's not included, because again, that's a negotiation, right? It's not in the agreement. So exactly how these things are interpreted and used will be critical to determine if you're in compliance or not, right? If you're negotiating out the policies around licensing in a virtualized environment because they were never in there anyway, then you have a lot less to worry about from a huge finding from the Oracle LMS audit team at the end. But you have to do that earlier in the process to be much more effective. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but the last thing you want to do is get into a position where you give a vendor like Oracle all this information and then they put it in a black box somewhere offshore and they give you an answer and you don't like that answer and now you're trying to prove that answer wrong. It'd be like, giving everything to the IRS and saying, we don't know what the rules are, we don't know what the policies are, but why don't you tell us how much money we owe you? And then we'll start negotiating from there. Like, no one would ever do that. So negotiating those policies are really important. And I mentioned a few: licensing in the cloud, licensing in a virtualized environment. Those are very specific to Oracle, but all vendors do this where they have policies. And they're very effective at determining, at having clients believe they are part of the agreement. And they're so effective because often the sales reps believe it too. Oh, that's our policy, so you have to follow that. It's our software. And that's not really the case. We always, at Palisade, talk about following the contracts. So if your contract references a policy, like Oracle's references technical support policies, yeah, then we have to pay attention to those a lot closer than we do something that's non-contractual. Because Oracle could put anything out there, right? They could put something out there tomorrow that says you're not allowed to use anything in the cloud. Doesn't mean that completely changes your agreements. In fact, Oracle has changed policies around cloud licensing, where at one point they didn't have any. Then they made it very advantageous, because they wanted to be a database company, to use their software in any cloud. And then they sort of took that policy from a shield for customers and turned it into a weapon to use against them, to say, hey, you need potentially twice as many licenses if you're running over here, or you can't run it over there because it's not authorized. So understanding those policies and negotiating them in or out, whether it's in the agreements with Oracle or in an audit, is really important. The other thing is, you have policies, so use them, right? We have a policy that we will not share our confidential hardware, software configurations outside of our organization. It's our policy. So you want to use those policies, understand what your own policies are, so that if Oracle is going to argue policy, you've got your own to back up, because it's your data, it's your security, not Oracle's, that is at issue when you start transferring information overseas to somebody else. So you want to be really, really careful. So negotiating policies in or out. Now, I have said negotiate them, but also another effective way is to not negotiate them, just to live in the vagueness of your agreements with Oracle. And that's really uncomfortable, especially for auditors and accountants and people who like to see things black or white, yes or no. As you can probably tell from this presentation, I'm not one of those people. I love living in the gray area. I love when there's different ways to look at things, because that puts me in control, and I can look through something and make an argument through a lens that puts me in the best possible light, versus trying to make sure I fit into this pigeonhole. So it's definitely something to understand that is negotiable, or maybe you want to stay silent on it, right? We can't negotiate every single policy that a vendor might have in an agreement. Would never get these things signed, but you want to really know what are the important ones, and how will that impact. So understanding what Oracle's policy is today, regardless of whether it's in the contract, if you can live with it, great. If you can't, that's great too. You just need to have your argument straight when Oracle comes knocking on the door. And let's talk about that. The third thing to negotiate, the audit process, right? So you've got a vendor, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, SAP. They come knocking on the door saying, congratulations, you have been chosen for an audit, and you need to send us all this information and set up a meeting in 3 days. So the first thing you want to do there is negotiate that process. So the process, again, focusing on Oracle agreements for a second, there is no process defined other than it has to start in a certain number of days, and you'll provide reasonable access to information so that Oracle can do its thing and audit the heck out of you. So, what does all that mean? Well, it's really important when we think about the cadence of an audit. I want to talk to you about how vendors do audits and how you should flip the script and negotiate something very different. When a vendor is auditing you, they make it very easy at the beginning of the audit. They send you this letter, it's non-confrontational, they set up a meeting, they maybe give you some spreadsheets, they ask for some data. You send all this information, and it's a nice, smooth process. And then at the end, bam, you get hit with a huge finding. Now remember, if you are chosen for an audit, most likely that vendor thinks you're out of compliance. So they are looking for you to give them information so they can have some data to support their opinion. Remember, we talked about opinions versus facts. Their opinion that they've precast that you're already out of compliance. So they are looking for data to support that opinion. So they make it very easy until the end, and then they give you this huge finding, and then it becomes difficult. Then it becomes confrontational. Then the sales teams come in and they threaten the legal teams. And then it becomes, how do we negotiate down from this really high number? Our recommendations, my recommendations, what I've seen work really well is if you negotiate that whole process upfront. So the audit becomes very difficult in the beginning because a vendor isn't used to someone standing up for themselves and saying, no, I'm not sending you all this information. That is unreasonable. How I use virtualization has nothing to do with your software. Now, if you can point me to the contract where it says it does, I'll be happy to comply. That's just one example. I know we're talking a lot about virtualization, but that is the Oracle world that we still live in. So you want to negotiate the process up front. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be challenging. But the process and how an audit is conducted will often determine whether or not you're in compliance. Now, let me give you an example. Again, what information is shared with the vendor? Well, what's relevant? The vendors want to gather as much information as possible and find things to lead you to believe that you're out of compliance. So if we can limit the scope of the things that they're allowed to see, legitimately allowed to see and not see, that's great. That's a big win for you. Not that we're trying to hide anything from the vendor, but it's just simply none of their business. And we know that they're going to take non-contractual items like policies and try to use them against you. So why give a vendor who doesn't need to know that information, doesn't have a right to it, why just send it to them? It doesn't make any sense to me. So negotiating that. Negotiating how the data will be processed. Is it going to be processed in your location? Again, let's talk about policies. You have a policy, I'm sure, that says data cannot be shared outside of your company. If a vendor wants to physically come in and audit you and sit there with a notebook, let them have at it. That's just another example. And we've done that. We've had Oracle, have to go to customer sites and conduct things on site. It prevents them from taking that data, again, shipping it offshore, putting it into a black box, giving them as much time as they want to find something that they might be able to hang their hat on. So again, negotiating, hey, yeah, come on site, bring your notebooks. You've got a couple of days, answer your questions, parse through the data, and be done with it. So that's a sort of an extreme example of how to negotiate the process. Another example is rather than sending all this information to a vendor so that they could determine whether or not you're in compliance, you could have an alternative process where you send them your results of your own internal audit that shows that you're in compliance. And again, you have to actually be in compliance, have a legitimate claim to compliancy to be able to do that. So that's another way. So rather than the vendor getting all this information and then trying to find something, you're sending them information that you've already gathered and say, no, Oracle, no, Microsoft, we are in compliance, and here's the proof that we're in compliance. And you can ask us anything you want about this. We're happy to answer your questions on our methodology and our process, but this is why we're in compliance. And ultimately, the goal is rather than negotiating from a really high number and trying to come down, right? So rather than getting a $100 million compliance finding from Oracle and signing a $10 million deal and saying, oh, look, we did great, we got it down by 90%. How about we start at zero, right? How about we start from a position where you're in compliance rather than trying to prove something to a vendor who already has this notion that you're out of compliance. So negotiating the audit process is definitely something that will have a huge impact on whether or not you're found to be in compliance or out of compliance in an audit. Item number 4 that you can negotiate is actually the final audit report. And this is true not just of Oracle, but of all vendors. So remember at the very beginning of this conversation, where we talked about opinions versus facts. Are you factually out of compliance, or is it someone's opinion that you're out of compliance? So when you get that audit report, let's say again from Oracle, that is whoever drafted that audit report, that is their opinion based on information and suppositions and insinuations and policy documents and all this other stuff that they have in their heads. It's their opinion as to sort of the best case scenario for Oracle. Honestly, that's most of the time, that's exactly what it is. But you have a different opinion. So even if you did not negotiate the contracts, and you did not negotiate the policies, and you did not negotiate the audit process, and you sort of went through everything, just doing everything the vendor said, and now you've got the final report from Oracle, well, then you could start negotiating from there. Well, you owe us $100 million because of this virtualization thing. I don't see that in my contract. You owe us this money because we think you're using the software to do that. That's not what we're doing with the software. Even looking at those audit reports and arguing the facts, not just opinions. We think you're using software on these 4 computers. And then you can go back and do your own audit and say, well, actually, we did an audit and we don't see the software is run in a way that requires a license on those 4 computers. And all these things we've successfully negotiated, helped our clients negotiate with vendors, with Oracle, for example. So even at the very end, if we didn't negotiate, that I just really want to emphasize that the audit report you're getting from the vendor is an opinion piece based on a point of view that they already had before they started auditing you. They were just looking for, in general, they're just looking for information that will put you in a less enviable position where you're trying to negotiate down from a high number. Remember, Oracle's audits and many vendors' audits, they are not designed to find the ultimate truth. They are designed to provide leverage for the vendor to increase their revenue. That's one thing they're designed to do. And they're also designed to protect the vendor's IP. So depending on your point of view, which one is first and which one is second, I tend to see evidence that sales reps are more interested in generating revenue than protecting IP, but there are different reps out there with different motivations. So really important to even negotiate both the facts and the opinions that are included in the final report from Oracle. And that's all I've got today. So 4 things to remember in terms of negotiating your compliance position with any vendor. These are not limited to Oracle. Is negotiate the heck out of your contracts. Think about those policies and think about what you want in your agreements and what you want to stay silent on. If you ever get an audit letter from a vendor, negotiate the process on how that audit will be conducted, and always take a proactive approach where you're giving the final answer to the vendor rather than the data behind it, if you can. And then finally, whether or not you've negotiated those first 3, when you get that final opinion when you get that final opinion piece from Oracle or any vendor, continue your negotiations. And if I had to add one more, if a 5th one, if you have to buy something from that vendor based on an audit, it brings you right back to number 1, which is negotiate that agreement, negotiate the settlement agreement, negotiate the contract that comes out of that if there is a compliance finding. So remember, compliance is as much an opinion as it is a fact. And if you negotiate all of those things throughout, you will be much more likely to be found in compliance by yourselves and your vendors. So I hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Craig Guarente from Palisade Compliance. And Jeffrey, I really, really, really want to thank you for letting me participate in the 2024 Global ITAM Summit. I've seen the other speakers. They're going to be amazing. I've participated before and it's been fantastic. So I encourage everyone who made it through my presentation to make sure you go watch the others because it really is valuable information that could help you survive and thrive as you are battling IP issues with vendors who might have different opinions than you. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you, Craig, for sharing your expertise with us. I, for one, learned a lot and still learn from you, along with learning from the other guests. You have a deep knowledge in Oracle and are willing to share it, which I appreciate. Now, a word from our sponsor, Service Management Leadership, as we continue our series of great guests coming up very.
Is your asset management program or CMDB sick? If your asset management program or CMDB is not healthy and you want to get either of them checked out, Service Management Leadership will diagnose the issues. We will provide you with a free initial consultation and assessment. The short assessment includes a review of your metrics and tools. This includes what you are measuring and why, plus your tools and integration. A meeting with stakeholders to understand their needs. Most issues originate from unstated or unmet stakeholder expectations. We will ask the right questions. We will then summarize our findings at a high level and give you a proposal that discusses next steps. What makes service management leadership different than most consultancies you encounter is a holistic approach that comes from being in the industry for a few decades. Yes, decades. Our founder, Jeffrey Tiefertiller, began in the asset management industry in May of 1994. Our approach includes an end-to-end understanding of your processes. The holistic approach also includes an understanding of your current state tools and what you want to accomplish. The most important aspect of our holistic approach is the alignment of activities to the needs of stakeholders. Every action or effort that is not aligned to what your stakeholders need is wasted. Our approach also includes a review of your in-house expertise. Lastly, our approach includes an understanding of your current metrics and reporting and what is needed. If you are not getting the value needed from your asset management program or your CMDB, contact Jeffrey Tiefertiller and our team of experts at Service Management Leadership.